Hello, welcome to Soulful Living. I'm Phillip Mountrose. I'm your host on the Soulful Living Show. We have a special guest today, Matthew Stapley. Hey, this is a show that provides timely keys and solutions for open-minded people like you, people who want to create a more joyful, meaningful, prosperous life. And a quick overview here about ourselves and Awakenings Institute with my wife and partner, Jane Mountrose. We're publishers, authors, trainers, coaches, founders of IAHP, International Association of Holistic Practitioners, and founders of Awakenings Institute, our nonprofit organization that helps people's unique gifts be honored and nurtured. And today, I'm really happy to have an associate, a colleague, Matthew Stapley, today, talking about, I think, a very relevant topic for us on soulful living, specifically finding peace through acceptance, finding peace through acceptance. Hey, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
It's great to be with you. Hey, quick
Likewise.
intro here of you. For people who don't know you, Matthew is a compassionate, kind-hearted, and down-to-earth, naturally gifted psychic medium, something he's been doing for his whole adult life, pretty much. He's a teacher, besides being a medium, a public speaker located in Ottawa, Canada. He holds international clientele. He's very popular, makes regular media and podcast appearances, specializes in helping people to find deeper meaning in their life experiences. Hey, welcome to Soulful Living. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Phil. It is a true pleasure to be here.
It's great to be with you. Hey, how did you get from where you were to where you are in finding peace through acceptance?
I think like everybody else did through several nervous breakdowns and standing in front of the cosmic mirror of life in a sense. But no, the truth
Yeah,
is,
right.
you know, through the process of learning about why things happen the way they happen or being able to find meaning in challenging experiences. And so my path has, like many people, has not been, particularly easy all the time. It's often been challenging, like everybody else's. And so years ago, I decided that instead of just, you know, doing away with or ignoring the hardship when I want to get on the other side of it, that I would go back and revisit my experiences to try to find, meaning in them. And in doing so, inadvertently, I found that that was a great way to find peace, even in terrible times.
Right. Yeah, finding peace is a big part of it. Yeah, it's interesting helping people create a prosperous life and finding peace. How do you reconcile the two? How do you get prosperity and peace?
I think the one of the important things is to look at what true prosperity means versus what a societal definition of prosperity means. Because at a societal level, there's an element that, what I consider to be efficiency based, which is, like the workhorse mentality of, hustling and working very hard to build something within your life. But I think that that efficiency leaves no room for emotional processing of any kind. And so having to sort of unlearn that method of being to go towards maybe more of abundance, which is mental, emotional, and physical security. It includes all of those things, and looking at an abundance way of living rather than just a prosperity way of living. And so unplugging basically, I think is an important part of that, and realizing that if we're going to shift things at a global level, we all have to do our part to make that happen by not feeding into situations that don't allow for emotional processing, like things like being a workhorse or whatever, and working together to try to find a way to make a society that is healthier for everybody.
Right. So what I'm understanding, hearing you, and what I understand is you need both. You need the peace. You need the abundance. Sort of the
Mhm.
it's almost a yin and yang there as
Yeah,
part of life that you want to be peaceful while you're being prosperous,
yeah,
while you're being abundant, and not
absolutely.
being stressed out about it.
Yeah, because I think, like peace and prosperity they're not really two sides of the same coin. Like if we take a peaceful approach to building prosperity or abundance or whatever, that's all optimally the healthiest thing to do. I think the way that our world is often structured is the idea of peace is gone, but the idea of prosperity or riches or abundance is so powerful. It's so strong because we're a survival-based society, unfortunately. So peace has kind of stayed out of the equation for a long time, unfortunately. So I think the way the world is going right now is you're seeing more and more people advocating for the idea of doing all of this, but doing it in a different way that allows people to be balanced as we work together to shift our world, I guess, into a better state for everybody.
Right. So before we get a little further into this piece through acceptance, you're a medium.
I am.
And so why don't you define or describe what it is, what you do, just so that's clear.
Sure, yeah. So mediums, I think everybody has the ability to connect with, higher realms and other realms and things like that.
Hmm.
But a medium is basically somebody who can communicate with other dimensional spaces. But most specifically, usually mediumship denotes being able to contact people who have passed away. And so I'm an evidential medium, which means that I can bring through details about somebody's life on Earth that I couldn't possibly know, things like causes of death and their personalities and describing what their house looked like and little things like that that build a picture of who that person was on Earth. And then, of course, bringing through communication in the form of messages for their loved ones who are still here.
Right. So going back to the topic, peace through acceptance, when you're working with people, how do you see that playing out? It must be very prominent for you to have chosen that as the topic today for Soulful Living here with
Uh,
Matthew Stapley.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that part of mediumship, the goal of mediumship is to bring healing to people or to facilitate healing.
Hmm.
So on one hand, mediumship could look like just bringing through messages, but my intention is to always make sure or intend that whatever messages come through for somebody are ultimately to the benefit of them and their life experience, their quality of life, and their path. And so that's a huge prominent focus of my intention. So with that being the intention, it's very easy for it to be about finding peace or acceptance within somebody's experiences.
Right. So many of the things that happen to us on a deeper level are probably different and have a different purpose and intent than they seem on the more ego superficial level.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I
What?
think
Yeah.
it,
Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just curious what you noticed. I mean, that seems a lot of my life and my work, our work, Jane, and here at Awakenings is helping people awaken to the power of their soul. That's our next
Yeah.
program. Is to see there is a life plan, that these things that are seemingly problematic difficulties are here to actually serve us,
Yeah.
ironically enough, paradoxically enough.
Yeah, very much so. I guess for me, it's all about looking at what benefit could be taken from it. So, I think everything in the universe works in a need and fulfillment sort of way for the most part. And so, why did we need the experience that we had? And I like to kind of dig into it at, a level that's, I guess, more down to earth than most people do. I like to look at, what are you learning from experiences A, B, and C, and what were the requirements before those experiences started? Like, what did you need as a person to be the best that you can be, and how did these terrible tragedies, how could they have possibly helped you to attain a better sense of self, even if it was hard?
You
Um,
want to give an example? Just I'm sure
sure,
you have so many people you work with, just to something that
sure.
illustrates it.
Yeah, so like I mean I can give an example from my own life even, but yeah, like a good example of that is I went through a period of time where I was, going through my own pain. I wasn't always the nicest person to people. I was kind of a challenging person to people. And so, the universe mirrored that back to me pretty significantly sometimes. And I got to look at myself, and that was hard. It was a very hard experience, but it was
Hmm.
beneficial. I needed to be able to see my inner workings and how they were playing out in the world, and I did. And so that was an experience that, even though it was hard, it was beneficial because I could use it in a transformational way. to better myself. And then, of course, we all become teachers of whatever we've learned. And so I think that I think that that translated to me helping people in that process. But big part of that process was self-acceptance, to allow myself to just stand in front of that big universal cosmic mirror and not judge the parts of myself that I didn't like. And so
Mm-hmm.
through that process, I was able to actually transform some of the things that I didn't like. And then other things, and this is what I notice with a lot of people, is when they dislike something about themselves, if they can shift their perspective on it to see it either as a gift that just hasn't fully developed yet, like the ugly duckling story, or if they can see that it came from a place of pain and they can heal that underlying pain to transform what they don't like into something more beneficial. I think that that can serve people in a very beautiful way. And then, of course, they become teachers of that, so they teach other people through their own journey how to accept themselves. And I think it's good vibes
Mm-hmm.
all the way around.
Right. So as you accept yourself, you can accept others. That's a big thing when you see, hey, this is something I don't like about myself, I don't like about the world.
Yeah,
Accepting it, which is difficult,
yeah,
and yet at the same time, since it's actually happening, not accepting it is actually putting you in denial of actually what you're experiencing,
yeah,
which is obviously unproductive. So
yeah.
that first recognition that this is happening to me, and going from there to a lot of things that wake us up to what we thought was going to happen, what we think is right, what we want to happen, and what is actually occurring can be a discrepancy there.
Very much so. And I think that as human beings, like the way that our brains are wired, there's a whole part of our brain that is used to making fast survival-based decisions, right? And so I think I think the way that our world has become a little bit has made that part of their brain very prominent in our reasoning and our perception as well. And so that part of the brain jumps on things. It makes quick decisions with not necessarily a lot of clarity because they're survival decisions. They're not like what should I do for a living? They're like, how do I get out of this situation quickly with my life intact? And so, I think the fact that we're as a society exhausted, overtired, not given time to process the things that happen to us adequately, and all of that bring out that sort of more primal way of thinking sometimes. And that can make it very challenging to get through our experiences, especially things like acceptance, because that type of thinking is very black and white. It's do or die.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I think part of healing the self and accepting the self is to sort of step away from that black and white level of thinking and get into the gray a little bit, if you can.
Yeah, in the gray. What do you find in the gray?
I think you find the unlimited potential of things in the gray. It's moving away from polarity and it brings everything into a space where there isn't really good and bad anymore. There's just healthy and unhealthy, more so rather than good and bad. And when somebody can bring the things they don't like about themselves into the gray, it's workable, it's actionable, it becomes something that has a lot of potential to it at that point. For example, when I was a kid, I was accused of being super, verbally impulsive. I had no filter. But as I got older, that actually served things quite well because and with mediumship, you can't think about what you're saying. You have to let it
Mm-hmm.
flow. And so something that
Mm-hmm.
was, in the ugly duckling stage as a kid became something that's, paramount to the work that I do and the way that I help people. The same way with a woman I knew that was considered the loud one when she was or the aggressive or abrasive one when she was like 11, is a lawyer who stands up for people all day long. That she's an advocate for people who cannot stand up for themselves. That thing in its ungrown state became her greatest gift. And so I think that's an example of things traveling through that gray zone. They become workable, but we can
Mm-hmm.
stop pushing them away and we can embrace
Mm-hmm.
them to see what we can create with it.
Yeah, well said.
Thank
We have
you.
a notion that we teach your greatest lesson becomes your greatest gift. So the biggest challenge is if you feel disempowered, then you're here to learn empowerment. If you feel like you can't speak up for yourself, then you're learning how to speak up for yourself. If you feel like you are just instinctively down, that you can't ground yourself, you're lost, then you're here to ground yourself and connect with nature, uh, etc. Going along with this sort of the seven chakras there. So yeah, that's interesting. The things that are challenging us the most are actually the very things we're here to learn about.
Very much so. And if you look at different healing modalities around the world, that is one belief that almost all of them have, especially things that are more like indigenous type beliefs. Like, for example, and I'm not indigenous, so I feel a little bit even bad speaking about this, uh, but like a lot of people with animal medicine, for example, if you fear that animal, look at the symbolism of it because it's probably what you actually need within your life. You need to embrace those qualities within yourself and the fear will dissipate. And I think what you're saying is kind of an example of that. What we fear actually holds elements of what we need. It's the medicine to what we need, or the medicine to what ails us, in a sense.
Right. Do you want to give an example in yourself or someone else about like how, going through fears to find the
Sure,
other side? So that would be peace
totally.
through acceptance too, would be a good
Yeah,
example of the
I,
topic.
I totally will. And I'm going to stick with the animal example because anybody who meets me for more than 5 minutes knows I'm an animal addict. So I'll
Okay.
give the animal example. So I was terrified of spiders, like really terrified of spiders. And then I was in the hospital when I was 19 after a car crash. And I went down to the lobby one day and there was this indigenous woman selling these spiders that she made out of beads. And I'll never forget this woman. Her name was Patty. And every time I think of her, my heart just explodes with love because that's what she embodies. And so I asked her, like, why are you selling spiders in a hospital? Like, it seems a little scary. And she said, oh no. She said, I'm Aboriginal, and spiders represent healing. They represent regeneration and the repair of tissues and things like that. And I thought, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna buy a spider then. And it stayed beside my bed for years. But as I began healing myself mentally and emotionally from things that I had experienced in my life, my house would fill up with spiders, and I was terrified of them. And it would only happen as I was going through a process of clearing out old energy from within myself. And the second I would heal whatever it was, the spiders were gone as if they'd never been there. And this has freaked out my family and friends forever because of that. But over time, the more I healed, the less afraid of spiders I became, to the point where now when I see one I'm happy that I see a spider. So that's an example of like the qualities that spider symbolism carry were things I was running away from because, as you know, healing is terrifying. It's uncomfortable. There's an ego death component to it, which is very uncomfortable. And so I think I was running from that for a long time. But as I healed, I became less afraid of spiders because of what they symbolize. So that's
Hmm.
an example, a weird one, but an example.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people have phobias of all kinds of things that, quote, they're all irrational, uh, but they have some basis in this life or a past life or somewhere else. And they definitely instinctively we react to it until we neutralize it and heal it.
Very much so, and I think it's kind of cool actually. It's amazing
Right.
how dynamic we are as people on all levels, as human beings. The way that we can relate to the world around us and heal ourselves is phenomenal.
Right. Yeah. So I'm wondering, when you get peace with acceptance, some things there's elements of injustice and suffering and having compassion. How do you apply having um, peace through acceptance in those areas?
It's a hard thing because as a spiritual person, I know everything happens for a reason. But as a human being, I get that there are certain things that words are just not going to help, and our spiritual beliefs
Hmm.
sometimes go out the window when something that
Right.
really shouldn't have to happen has happened. And so I think the first step in that is the grief process of going through the sadness and the anger and the hurt and the like lack of trust with the universe and all of these things that are totally normal human things. I think our first step in all of that is to embrace our humanity, to allow ourselves to fully and completely experience that hardship. And then when it's time, and it's different for everybody, beginning to pull it apart and see, what was under all of that. What did you learn from that? What can society learn from that in the case of social injustice? and how do we navigate a better path forward, knowing what we now know from having lived it. So yeah, I think the first step is be human, like really allow yourself to feel it, because
Hmm.
no words are going to make it feel better when it's fresh. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. You can only say so much. And I know a lot of your work as a psychic medium is dealing with people with grief who want help from people whom close loved ones they've lost.
Yes, that's right. And but I think when someone's grandmother passes away or parent, there's an element to that of like, oh well, they understand this was meant to happen, the person was elderly or whatever. But when somebody's children die in front
Hmm.
of them from violence, which is, terrible, there's no words that are going to make that feel better. And so in those moments, I try to just get in there with them, because I have heart. So I try to get in there with them a little bit, and I still bring through evidence and messages, but I think it's from a perspective a little bit of I'm angry for you. Like we can love God, but that doesn't we can't be angry as well sometimes at the universe. And so yeah, allowing somebody to holding space to allow somebody to go through that process, I think is
Hmm.
one thing we can all do as people when we see somebody going through hardship. Don't try to make it
Hmm.
all feel better. Hold space for them as they go through it on their own.
Yeah, grief encompasses a lot of feelings, and some of it is anger, and there's a purpose for anger and grief in other places. We
Yeah,
have the whole palette of emotions, all of us, for us to experience as a
yeah,
human experience.
yeah. They're all important. I think the only sort of qualifier that we can ever put on an emotion is it leading to unhealthy actions. And at that point, then maybe coming up with some kind of intervention for somebody would be helpful. But if somebody's just angry, then they need to be angry and
Hmm.
understand that that's normal. A normal, like you said, a normal human experience. It's part of what we're here to do.
Hmm. Right. So, what are your passions? What are you looking forward to going, your early, seemingly early, who knows how long we have in your career? What is it that you're most excited about now?
Yeah, I just like hanging out with people.
Hmm. You're a people
That's
person.
I am like if that's really it. I mean, all of the work that I do, obviously I do private readings for people, but the bulk of what I do it pretty much for free because I just love doing it and I love, doing things like this and getting to go back and forth with somebody who's an expert in their field and we get to pull things apart, human experience wise. I think that's a beautiful thing. I love that. I love getting to hear about what other people have going on in their lives. So when I do a live on my own page, there's generally quite a few people on there, but seeing what's going on in their lives is wonderful. So I think I'm here for the party, actually. I think that's what I'm realizing as I'm telling you this.
You
I'm
like
here
the fun of
saying
it.
I like the fun of it and the healing, the helping to heal people to heal themselves part of it too. But I think it's kind of all of it. It's all of it.
Yeah. So, some people find out what they want to do at a later age. How did you find out at such a young age in your teenage that this is what you wanted to do?
It definitely chose me. It was not on the rate, like it wasn't the plan. I was planning on going to, go to nursing school, which I did. And then I had to leave that because I had a car accident, but then I went back and I became a lab tech. So I did that and I finished that program and I worked in it for 3 months. But before I even did that, I was doing readings professionally, but I thought that was, the stuff that I could do when I was younger, but I need to grow up and be an adult soon, so I have to go to college. And then, I thought after that I would, work in healthcare, and that did not last. In fact, I kept getting fired from everywhere that I worked. So
Uh-huh.
I said, I guess I'm doing readings then, and then that just kind of led to where things are now, and I love it. I like trying to help people, and there's the creative side of it, is a lot of fun for me. The writing, the making card decks, the fun infographic kind of pictures that I make sometimes. All of that I think is very enjoyable.
Hmm. Connecting with people. And I'm seeing some people here in the Facebook page, Mitch and Daniel, who are very complimentary towards you. And uh, what you're doing and the integrity that you have.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I just see that. Yeah, I can see the comment here. Oh, Daniel Keating. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Yeah, that's great. So if people want to find you, how do they find Matthew Shapley?
Stapley.
Stapley.
Basically, no, I think Facebook. I think that's generally the best way. So my Facebook page is Matthew Stapley, Psychic Medium, and I'm on there a lot. Definitely every Monday and Friday. Monday for readings, Friday for craft night, where we do arts and crafts and tell terrible jokes and talk about life hardship stuff. Yeah, that's probably the best way for sure.
And if you were to give people maybe your best tips about peace through acceptance, what might you say as a summary, or you'd want people to remember about that topic?
I think, and anyone who's watching this from my page is probably going to roll their eyes because they hear me say this 50 times a day, probably. But make it useful. Like the only way
Hmm.
hardship will ever win in your life is if you do nothing with it. So take your experiences, work with them, figure out how to make them useful for yourself and for the world around you.
Hmm.
And that's my biggest, that's to me, that is the best way that I've ever found peace with anything was to use it.
So if people are just going through like grieving, since that's a lot of the people you help, and are in a deep state of grief over something, what would you suggest for finding acceptance, and peace?
Allow yourself to go through the emotions of it, seek help if necessary, and try to celebrate the person's life that has transitioned onto the other side. Try and celebrate it. Know that they're with you. I truly believe as a medium and as a minister, because I'm also an interfaith minister, that our loved ones are instantaneously at peace. They're always around us, and everything is forgiven at the last breath. So if you left things on bad terms with somebody, or if you feel that you left things on bad terms with somebody that's passed on, please know that they don't feel that way. It has never ever come through in my 17 years of doing readings. Nobody has come through angry at somebody. In fact, the spirit world has always said everything's forgiven at the last breath. So allowing yourself to release maybe feelings of guilt or perceptions that you've done something wrong is very important. And then, of course, to seek assistance if you're really struggling from a grief counselor or a therapist or a healer, somebody that can help you navigate that process if it gets too challenging.
So there seems to be, some people are at the point where like I totally get that the person is on the other side and is supporting me and is with me, and yet the person is not physically there with you anymore. So there's
No.
that physical loss.
Yeah, of course. And there's an element of that too that I've noticed with grief is it's people have all this love and they don't know where to put it anymore. They can't express it in the ways that they did before. And I think that so realizing that there is a getting to know our loved ones in a different way. Before you could call them on the phone, maybe now obviously it's not possible. So sitting outside or having a quiet moment just with the intention that they're with you. I think it's yeah, a lot of grief on the later stages of grief, I think, are about getting to know the person as they are now. How do they still fulfill a role within your life, even if they're not physically with you? And what I've noticed in watching people go through that process and having gone through it myself many times, is that when you can sort of figure out how they're still part of your life, even though it's not physical, it can be quite helpful in allaying that
Hmm.
desperation and sadness.
That, what was the one word? That's what in sadness?
Desperation.
Desperation. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like part of the solution is to find out where the person was fulfilling to you. And
Hmm.
even though that person is unique and, quote, can't be replaced, but some of the energies and focus and love in your heart can be applied in this lifetime in your daily life to things, so you still feel fulfilled and active and whole going
Ab
forward, so
ab
you're not at a
ab
loss and feeling that you are incomplete now.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and also seeing that people will give you signs from the other side. They are still active in your life. It's just in a different way.
Hmm.
Like whether it be dream visitations or just you think of them all of a sudden and you feel a warmth in your heart. I mean, I believe
Mm-hmm.
that those happen when our loved ones step closer to us from the other side. I think we can feel that on some level. So, understanding that every person on the planet is in constant communication with the universe around them at a very subtle energetic level. Understanding that you can tune into that, everybody can tune into that conversation on some level. So yeah, I think that's part of that realizing they're still there on some level, even though it's not
Mm-hmm.
physical.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great. Um, Anything else you want to share or add to finding peace through acceptance, Matthew?
I think the only other things that I can think of are just, whatever it is that you're experiencing in your life, like allow yourself to feel it, to process it, to whatever you do it all the way. Because at the end of the day, we don't end anything, we complete things. And so when you've got a challenge in front of you and you're trying to navigate it, obviously we don't want our hardships to last forever. So looking at it not as an ending, but bringing something to completion is very important. And then allowing yourself to see how that process can be useful within your path is very important. But I think looking at things as coming to completion as you're going through a difficulty might also bring a sense of peace in as well, and also
Mm-hmm.
more solutions, more solutions.
Right. I think that's a deeper, more profound way,
Yeah,
more holistic way that you're completing something and experience a relationship on this level
yeah,
rather than it's ending, which is a very finite either or, going back to
yeah,
what we were talking about earlier, like, you've either succeeded or you failed, you prospered or
yeah,
you didn't make the cut. We refer to Wallace Wattles classic work, Science of Being Great, Science of Getting Rich, his works that he talked about the competitive or the creative plane.
yeah.
Very poetic way of describing it. So being more on the creative plane in your life rather than the competitive plane, the dog eat dog, Darwinian survivalist
Yes.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good example, even if throwing back to what we were talking about earlier, like the creative plane would be much more the gray zone,
Right.
the in a positive way. The Darwinian, like dog eat dog, survive or don't way of thinking, that's more black and white, I think. And I think when we can be creative, I mean, creativity itself in general fulfills multiple elements of our being. It fulfills us emotionally, mentally, energetically, spiritually, physically, a lot of the time. I think creativity in general is a super important thing for the health of ourselves as human beings.
Right. So, and connecting more with nature, which is very creative and rich.
Totally.
If you look at a tree, it's very beautiful, the patterns in it. But if you just look at like a desk, it's pretty plain and mundane. It's not going to inspire you and put you in the flow as nature will. So, if you, of course, in works of creativity and art that people make, in sounds and natures and so forth, and beautiful things, that's uplifting too. But being more in that creative flow
Yeah.
of art and nature is some place to help you find
A-
more peace and acceptance and creativity and aliveness.
Absolutely. And I think, when we look at what healing is, all healing is bringing flow to something that wasn't, and
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about creativity just now, you mentioned how it flows, and that's a beautiful and important thing. And I think if we can use creativity to bring healing, even, I think that's a wonderful thing, because anything
Mm-hmm.
that is healing oriented, all it is unblocking something. It's creating flow where there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't.
Right.
So yeah, I think they can
That's
go
well
hand
said.
in hand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just to add one more point as we're getting too close to the close here, it's normal to resist when some problem occurs in you or my or anyone watching this life. You will resist it. It's not going to be, oh great, I just lost, someone just banged into my car, I just lost my pet. There's not going to be but the resistance needs to be very temporary, because if you stay resisting, you become stuck. And if you
Yeah.
become stuck, then there's going to be a lot of healing and it's going to compound and aggravate.
Yeah, you become a dam that just does not open. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
water building up on one side, but no flow on the other.
Yeah. So you
And
have to release that, figure ways to do that
it,
through
exactly.
something, through what your work or holistic EFT or what we're doing or something. Find someone, a resource to open the dam, as you put it nicely.
And I have to say, by the way, I loved your holistic EFT course. I
Oh, thank you.
absolutely, this is, again, if anyone from my page is watching, if you want to learn the emotional freedom technique from two very skilled and very amazing teachers, Phillip and Jane Mountrose, are the place to go. They're fantastic. One of the best courses I've ever taken.
Well, thank you. That's a nice compliment. Yeah, we've been doing that as a lot of people know the EFT tapping technique. We take a more holistic, heart-centered approach to it to get kind of to the deeper place to it. So yeah, thanks.
It was awesome. It really
Yeah,
was.
I'm glad that was good for you. Well, as we're getting to a close, anything else you wanted to add,
I think
Matthew?
other than thank you for having me here and thank you for the wonderful conversation, I truly enjoyed it. I think that's it, really, for me.
Yeah. Well, you were a great guest. You do great work. I loved your approach, and I can see why you're a popular medium. People really want your services because you're a very heart-centered person. Uh, and I wish you the best. I look forward to connecting with you in the future too.
Thank you very much. And me too. And I'm going to look at some of your other courses that you have going on because
Yeah, we have
you've
other
got some great
coaching and
stuff.
healing courses and
Yeah.
spiritual kinesiology, healing from the soul, right? Yeah.
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 Super cool. Thank you
Great.
for
You're doing
having me.
great work. I'll conclude here saying you've been watching Matthew Stapley here on the Soulful Living Show with me, Phillip Mountrose, finding peace through acceptance. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with other people. We focus on a practical soulful tip every week here. Our website, getting through getting thru.org/holistic. We value your support and tuition for our courses helps our nonprofit institute, Awakenings Institute, and share the message of love with those around you. Thank you again, Matthew. Everyone, have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
week.